An elegant Victoria carriage, drawn by two magnificent black horses, stood at the entrance of the mansion. It was the end of June, about 5:30 in the evening. Between the rooftops of the houses enclosing the front courtyard gleamed a clear, sultry, joyous sky. The Countess de Maupassant appeared on the front steps just as her husband was entering the gate on his way home. He stopped short, looked at her, and paled slightly. She was strikingly beautiful, slender, graceful, with an elongated oval face, skin the color of golden ivory, large gray eyes, and black hair. Without glancing at him, as if she had not even noticed his presence, she seated herself in the carriage with an easy, noble grace that made the Count's heart contract once again with the old, humiliating pang of jealousy. He approached and bowed. "Going for a drive?" he asked. She replied with a look of disdain. "As you see. To the boys? Perhaps. May I accompany you? The carriage is yours." Unmoved by her cold tone, he stepped in, sat beside her, and ordered, "To the boys." The footman took his place beside the coachman. The horses, prancing lightly and tossing their heads, moved off, settling into an even pace as soon as they turned into the street. The couple sat side by side in silence. The husband searched for an opening to speak, but his wife's stubbornly severe expression kept him from beginning. At last, he cautiously slid his hand toward the Countess's gloved fingers, as if by accident brushing them, but her abrupt withdrawal was so full of aversion that he grew uneasy, despite his habitual authority, which verged on despotism. Softly, he said, "Gabrielle." Without turning her head, she asked, "What do you wish? You are enchanting." She remained silent, leaning back in the carriage with the air of an angry queen. Meanwhile, they were making their way up the Champs-Élysées toward the Arc de Triomphe at the Place de l'Étoile. At the end of the long avenue, the massive monument rose with its colossal arch into the crimson sky, the sun seeming to set directly upon it, scattering golden dust all around. A stream of carriages, flashing with the brass and silver of harnesses and the facets of lantern glass, flowed in two directions, toward the boys and back into the city. Count de Maupassant spoke again. "My dear Gabrielle." She could no longer restrain herself, and answered irritably, "Ah, leave me in peace. Have I not even the right to be alone in my own carriage?" He pretended not to hear, and went on, "You have never been so beautiful as you are today." She no longer concealed her vexation. "You waste your words. I swear to you, I will never again be yours." He was stunned, but his ingrained habit of command prevailed, and his "What do you mean by that?" rang out not as a lover's question, but as the rough bark of a master. She replied in a half-whisper, though the clatter of wheels made it impossible for the servants to hear. "What do I mean? Do you wish me to tell you?" "Yes, you may. Everything. Everything. Everything I have carried in my heart since the day I became the victim of your selfishness." He flushed crimson with anger and astonishment, clenched his teeth, and muttered, "Go on." He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, with a great red beard, a fine figure, a nobleman, a man of the world, regarded as an irreproachable husband and exemplary father. For the first time on that drive, she turned her face toward him. "Oh, you will hear unpleasant words. But know this, I am ready for anything, I fear nothing, and I fear you now less than anyone in the world." He too looked her in the eyes, trembling with rage, and whispered, "You are mad. No. But I will no longer be the victim of the hideous torture of motherhood. You have subjected me to it for 11 years. I wish to live as a woman of society. I have the same right to do so as any other." He turned suddenly pale and murmured, "I do not understand." "Yes, you do. It is 3 months since I bore my last child. And since I am still beautiful, and despite your efforts, have lost almost none of my charm, as you yourself admitted just now when you saw me on the steps, you think it time to make me pregnant again. Are you out of your mind? Quite sane. I'm 30 years old, I have 7 children. We've lived together for 11 years, and you probably hope it'll go on for another 10, and maybe then you'll stop being jealous. He seized her hand abruptly and gripped it tightly. I won't allow you to speak to me like that again, and I'll keep speaking until I've said everything I've held back. And if you try to stop me, I'll raise my voice loud enough for the coachman and footman to hear. That's the only reason I let you into the carriage, so there'd be witnesses to force you to listen and restrain yourself. Listen. You've always repulsed me, and I never hid it. I never lied to you, sir. You married me against my will, my parents were in dire straits, and you, having gotten what you wanted, took me by force because you were rich. They pressured me, and I cried. In essence, you bought me. And when I was already in your power, ready to be a loyal companion, to grow fond of you, to forget your tactics of intimidation and coercion, to remember only that I must be a devoted wife and love you with all my heart, you immediately began to grow jealous. Jealous in a way no man ever has, a base, shameful jealousy, degrading to you and insulting to me. You spied on me constantly. Barely 8 months after our wedding, you were already suspecting me of every kind of deceit and even made it known. What a disgrace! And since you couldn't forbid me from being beautiful and admired, couldn't change the fact that in salons and even in newspapers I was called one of the most beautiful women in Paris, you devised another way to ward off any suitors. That's when your repulsive idea was born, to keep me perpetually pregnant, until I became repulsive to men. Oh, don't deny it. I didn't understand at first, but then I saw through it. You even bragged about it to your sister, and she, loving me, told me outraged by your vulgarity. Remember our battles, the broken doors, the smashed locks. What kind of existence did you impose on me for 11 whole years? The life of a factory mare, locked in a stable. And what's more cynical, when I was pregnant, I disgusted you, and you avoided me for months. During each pregnancy, you sent me off to the countryside, to the family estate, into the lap of nature. But the moment I returned, fresh, beautiful, full of strength and once again surrounded by attention, with the hope of finally living the life of a young, wealthy woman, your jealousy flared up again, and you resumed your pursuit with that vile, loathsome desire that torments you even now, sitting beside me. And it's not the desire to possess me, I would never have refused you, but the desire to disfigure. Eventually, I uncovered another of your secrets. You wanted children because during pregnancy I ceased to be an object of suspicion. Your fatherly feeling was born not of love, but of relief and joy that my figure was swelling and I was temporarily removed from the circle of male attention. Oh, that joy! How many times I saw it in your eyes, in your gestures, in everything. Children, to you, are not your blood, but symbols of your victory. Victory over me, over my youth, beauty, charm, success. A way to silence the admiring voices that surrounded me. You flaunt the children, parade them in the break through the Bois de Boulogne, let them ride donkeys in Montmorency, take them to matinees at the theatre so everyone sees you with them and says, "What a wonderful father." And so they keep saying it, endlessly. He grabbed her hand again, this time with such brutal force that the countess was forced into silence, choking back the cry that rose in her throat. He hissed. "I love my children, do you hear me?" he growled. "What you've just confessed is shameful for a mother. But you belong to me. I am the master, your master, and I can demand anything I want from you, whenever I want it. And the law is on my side." He crushed her fingers in the vice of his strong, muscular fist so tightly it seemed her bones might snap. She turned pale from the pain, struggling in vain to free her hand from the iron grip. Her breath grew ragged, tears welled in her eyes. "Now you see that I'm the master, that I'm stronger," he said, loosening his hold slightly. She spoke again. "Do you think I'm religious?" He looked at her, surprised. "Of course. Do you believe I have faith in God?" "Certainly. Do you think I could lie if I swore before the altar where the body of Christ is kept?" "No." "Would you come with me to church?" "Why?" "You'll find out." "Will you come?" "If you wish, then yes." She called out loudly. "Philippe." The coachman, eyes fixed on the horses, turned slightly. "To Saint Philippe du Roule," she ordered. The carriage, which had been nearing the gates of the Bois de Boulogne, turned and headed back toward the city. The entire ride passed in silence. When the carriage stopped at the church portal, Madame de Mascaret stepped out swiftly and entered the sanctuary. The Count followed a few paces behind. She did not pause until she reached the choir rail, where she dropped to her knees beside a chair, covered her face with her hands, and began to pray. She prayed for a long time. Standing behind her, the Count noticed she was crying quietly, soundlessly, with that deep, hopeless sorrow that pierces the soul. A faint tremor ran through her body, ending in a short sob she struggled to suppress. At last, wearied by the scene, the Count touched her shoulder. She flinched as if burned, then straightened and looked him directly in the eyes. "Here is what I have to say to you. I fear nothing. Do what you will. Kill me, if you wish. One of our children is not yours. I swear it here, before God, he hears me. It is the only revenge I could take for your vile male tyranny, for the prison of childbirth to which you condemned me. Who was my lover? You will never know. I gave myself to him without love, without joy, only to deceive you. And he, too, made me a mother. Which child is his? You will never know. I have 7 children, guess. I meant to tell you later, much later, because betrayal becomes revenge only when the husband learns of it. But you forced me to confess today. That's all." She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, bracing herself to hear the furious footsteps of her husband behind her, and then to feel the crushing blow of his fist. But nothing happened. Reaching the carriage, she climbed in at once, trembling with terror, breathless with emotion, and shouted to the coachman, "Home." The horses surged forward at a brisk trot. 3 girls, the eldest just turned 10, all fair-haired and dressed in pale blue frocks trimmed with delicate white lace, looked like elegant little dolls. The youngest had only just begun her 3rd year. All 3 were already lovely and promised to grow into beauties, just like their mother. The 3 boys, all brunettes, with the eldest, 9 years old, already dark-haired, seemed destined to become strong, broad-shouldered men. The whole family appeared as one harmonious whole, healthy, vigorous, as if of a single bloodline. The abbé recited the prayer customary on days when no guests were expected. In the presence of outsiders, the children did not dine at the table. The meal began. The countess, overcome by sudden emotion, sat with her eyes lowered, while the Count studied the boys and girls in turn, his gaze flitting anxiously from one face to another. Suddenly, he set his glass down so abruptly that the stem cracked, and the wine, diluted with water, spilled across the tablecloth. At the sound, the Countess flinched so violently she nearly jumped from her chair. Their eyes met. From that moment on, despite themselves, their glances kept crossing like the barrels of loaded pistols. Sensing the tension, the abbé tried to spark conversation, shifting from topic to topic. But his efforts were fruitless, none found a response. The Countess, guided by social etiquette and relying on feminine tact, attempted 2 or 3 times to sustain the conversation, but in vain. She was so agitated that the sound of her own voice frightened her in the silence of the spacious dining room, where only the clink of silver against porcelain could be heard. Suddenly, her husband leaned forward and said, "Will you swear here, before your children, that you told me the truth?" Hatred flared instantly in her eyes. Matching the force of her gaze, she raised both hands, her right above the heads of her sons, her left above the heads of her daughters, and declared firmly, without the slightest tremor, "By the lives of my children, I swear I told you the truth." The Count rose, flung his napkin onto the table with fury, shoved his chair against the wall, and left without a word. The Countess exhaled with relief and, as if savoring her first victory, calmly said to the children, "Don't worry, my darlings. Papa has had a serious upset and is very distressed. In a few days, it will all pass." She spoke with the Abbé, exchanged words with Miss Smith, and found a warm, tender phrase for each child, the kind of affection that fills a child's heart with joy. After dinner, they all moved to the drawing room. She chatted cheerfully with the older ones, told stories to the younger ones, and gave each a long kiss before bed. Once the children had gone to sleep, the Countess returned alone to her room. She waited, certain he would come. But now, alone, she resolved to defend her body and her dignity just as she had defended her social honor. In the pocket of her dress, she placed a small revolver she had purchased a few days earlier. The hours passed, the house grew quiet. Only the distant, muffled sound of carriages drifted in from the street. She waited, tense, no longer afraid of her husband, ready for anything and almost triumphant, for she had found a torment for him that could last a lifetime. But dawn was already seeping through the fringe of the curtains, and he had not come. With astonishment, she realized he would not. Locking the door with both key and bolt, the latter installed at her request, she lay down and remained awake for a long time, wondering what he would do next. With her morning tea, the maid brought a letter from her husband. He wrote that he was leaving on a journey, and in the postscript noted that all necessary funds would be transferred to her through the notary. It was at the opera, during the intermission of Robert the Devil. Men in top hats and deep-cut waistcoats that revealed dazzling white shirts adorned with gold and jeweled cufflinks stood near the footlights, surveying the boxes. There, bathed in light, ladies in diamonds and pearls, their shoulders bare, resembled flowers in a luxurious conservatory. Their beautiful faces seemed to bloom in response to glances, music, and voices.
With their backs turned to the orchestra, two friends stood conversing, surveying the gallery of gowns and glitter, the parade of genuine or finite elegance, jewels, luxury, and pretension that arched in a semicircular air above the spacious stalls of the theatre. One of them, Roger de Salins, said to chess companion, Bernard Grandin, "Look at the Countess de Maupassant. She's still so beautiful." Bernard raised a chess lorgnette toward the tall woman seated in the opposite box. She appeared strikingly young, and her dazzling beauty drew glances from every corner of the hall. Her skin, with its soft ivory hue, gave her the appearance of a marble statue. In her thick, yet black hair, a slender arc of diamond diadem sparkled like the Milky Way. After a moment's gaze, Bernard replied with playful intonation, yet full conviction, "No doubt about it. How old is she now?" "Wait, I can't tell you exactly. I knew her when she was still a girl. I remember her debut in society. She's 36. Impossible. I'm certain. She doesn't look a day over 25. She has 7 children. Unbelievable. And all her life. She's a wonderful mother. I visit her occasionally, a marvelous family, come, healthy. In high society, the countess is considered a model wife and mother. Strange. And no rumors about her? None touch. And her husband? Isn't he a peculiar man? Yes and no. It seems there was once a small domestic drama between them, one of those things people suspect but never truly know. Though, one might guess a few things. Such as? I know nothing for certain. These days Masquerade lives a rather wild life, but he is said to be the perfect husband. Back then, he was gloomy, brooding. Since he began chasing skipperdies, is grown indifferent to everything, yet he looks like a man not by secret saura. Is I get noticeably. The two friends continued discussing the hidden and often inexplicable sufferings that are seen from families, from mismatched temperaments or perhaps from some subtle physical aversion, invisible at first. Still watching Madame de Masquerade, Roger de Salins said. It's hard to believe that woman has 7 children. Yes, all within 11 years. 10 at 30, she refused to bear any more, and that marked the beginning of her brilliant social life, which, it seems, will go on for quite some time. Poor women. WHOI How can one not? Just imagine, 11 years of pregnancy for a woman like that. It's hell. Youth, beauty, dreams of success, the poetic vision of a dazzling life, all sacrificed to the cruel law of reproduction. A healthy woman reduced to a mere childbearing machine. But that's nature. Exactly, nature is our enemy, and we must resist it. It constantly drags us down to the level of beasts. Everything pure, beautiful, refined, and elevated on this earth, it's not God's doing, but man's. We brought beauty into life, mystery, charm, by singing of it as poets, interpreting it as scientists. God created only crude beings, riddled with the seeds of disease, who live a few years in their prime, then again die like mayflies. And it seems he made them solitary reproduce in a grotesque, almost laughable manner, and then preach. I said grotesque reproduction, and I stand by it. What could be more absurd than that ridiculous act of procreation? If the Creator had endowed each organ with multiple noble functions, WHI not resign the secret mission to one that is dignified and pure? The mouth, it nourishes the body and expresses thought. Thence, it gives air to the lungs and brings us the world's fragrances. The earth, their laurels to communicate, to enjoy music, to transform sound into dreams, joy, infinity. But as if in mockery, the mischievous God denied man the ability to ennoble or poeticize the iron with woman. And so man invented love, a worthy answer to the cunning dirty. He romanticized it so deeply that woman sometimes forgets the touches she most endure. And those who refuse to deceive themselves invented vice, refined debauchery, are not a way to outwit God and pay shameless, yet beautiful tribute to beauty. A normal human reproduces just like the animals do, obeying the relentless law of nature. Look at that woman, exclaimed Salins. Isn't it a terrible thing to think that this jewel, this pearl, created to embody beauty, to inspire admiration, reverence, and adoration, spent 11 years of her life giving earth to Guy de Maupassant? Bernard Grandin lived. There is some truth in that, perhaps, But how many people would actually understand you? Silence grew more impassionate. Do you know how I imagine God? He said. As a colossal, incomprehensibly reproductive organ, a scattering billions of worlds across the universe like a fish spawning in the boundless sea. He creates because it is his divine function, but he has no idea what is doing. His fertility is mindless. He doesn't even suspect the strong combinations born of the seeds he flings. Human thought, it's nothing but a random byproduct of his activity, a fleeting, unintended extraordinary doom to vanish with our planet, and perhaps to reappear someday, somewhere in the cosmos, in this form or another, in new permutations of eternal elements. And it is this insignificant extraordinary, our consciousness, that makes life so difficult for us in a world not made for us, not designed to nourish, shelter or satisfy thinking beings. Consciousness obliges us, if we possess even a shred of refinement or culture, to constantly struggle against what people still call the ways of providence. Grandin, long familiar with his friend's imaginative outbursts, asked. So you believe human thought is the accidental child of a blind divine impulse? Exactly, DMT. The impellent workings of the brain's nervous centers are like a chemical reaction sparked by an unexpected combination of elements, or an electric flash born of friction or chance contact. It's one of countless phenomena rising from the boundless, whimsical diversity of living matter. And the evidence is plain to anyone who looks closely at the word around theorem. If human thought were part of a divine plan meant to become what it is today, so unlike the meager minds of animals, so inquisitive, restless, and yearning, then surely the world would have been built for such beings. But instead, you're crammed into this narrow, uncomfortable animal pen where, by the will of some short-sighted providence, you're expected to live naked in caves or under trees, feeding on the corpses of fellow creatures or raw plants grown under sun and rain. Think for a moment, it's obvious this world was not made for us. Thought, that miracle blooming in the cells of the brain, thought, fragile, hazy, and ignorant as it is and will always be, makes every thinking person a perpetual hile on this earth. Look at it, this earth, supposedly given by God to its inhabitants. Isn't it clear that the plants and forests were made for animals? What is there here for us? Almost nothing. But for theorem, everything, caves, trees, leaves, springs, ready-made hams, food and drink. That's why people like me are never truly content here. Only those closest to animals are. And what of poets, refined and restless souls, dreamers, seekers? Ah, poor souls. I eat cabbage and crates, demiti, onions, turnips, and radishes. I eat theorem because I must to theorem, because we learned to like their tasty, because nothing else grows here. But it's rabbit and goat food, just as grass and clover are for cows and horses. When I see ripe wheat in the field, I'm convinced there's growth for sparrows and swallows, not for a my mouth. So when you chew bread, you're stealing from the birds, when you eat chicken, you're robbing the foxes and weasels. Isn't the quail, the pigeon, the partridge meant for the hawk? And the ram, the goat, the bull, aren't they the natural prey of large predators, not the fat slice of meat served to us roasted with truffles dug from theirs by pigs?
But my dear friend, animals don't have to do anything to live here. They are at home, their table and shelter are ready-made. All they need to do is graze or hunt and devour one another according to instinct. God never foresaw love or peaceful manners. He foresaw only death, living beings savagely killing and consuming each other. And we? How much labor, strength, patience, ingenuity, imagination, enterprise, skill, and talent it took for us to make this rocky, root-bound soil even remotely habitable. Just think of all we've done against nature and in defiance of nature, simply to live tolerably, even modestly, even slightly comfortably, even slightly beautifully, and still, it's not worthy of us. And the more civilized, intelligent, and refined we become, the more we must conquer and subdue the animal instinct planted in us by God's will. Just consider, we had to invent civilization, all of it, with its countless things, so many things, from socks to telephones. Think of everything you see daily, everything we use in one way or another. To soften our beastly fate, we imagined and created everything, starting with shelter, then delicious food, sauces, candies, pastries, drinks, fabrics, garments, ornaments, beds, mattresses, carriages, railways, and endless machines. And beyond that, we invented science, art, writing, and poetry. Yes, we created art, poetry, music, painting. All ideals come from us, as does every alluring aspect of life, women's fashion and men's talents, and in the end, we managed to embellish, to make less bare, less monotonous, less burdensome the existence of mere reproducers, for whom divine providence brought us into being. Look at this theater. Isn't it the gathering of a human society created by us, not foreseen by eternal design, unknown to it, accessible only to our consciousness? Don't you see that this refined, sensual, and intellectual entertainment was invented by a restless, dissatisfied little animal like you or me, and invented solely for itself? Look at that woman, Madame de Maupassant. God made her to live in a cave, naked or wrapped in animal skins. But isn't she better as she is now? By the way, do you know why that fool of a husband, having such a companion, and especially after the vulgarity of making her a mother 7 times, why he suddenly abandoned her and started chasing after girls? Grandin replied, my dear fellow, perhaps that's precisely the point. In the end, he realized that sleeping at home every night was costing him too much. And the very principles you've laid out philosophically, he arrived at them through household budgeting. 3 knocks sounded, the signal for the final act. The friends turned, removed their top hats, and took their seats. The Count and Countess de Maupassant sat silently side by side in the carriage taking them home from the opera. Suddenly, the husband spoke. Gabrielle, what do you want from me? Don't you think this has gone on long enough? What exactly? The dreadful torment I've endured from you for 6 years. But I don't know how to help you. Tell me at last, which one? Never. Think about it. I can't look at the children, can't be with them, without my heart tightening with doubt. Tell me, which one? I swear to you, I'll forgive. I'll treat him just like the others. I have no right. Don't you see I can no longer bear this life, this agonizing thought, this eternal, unrelenting question that torments me every time I see them? I'm losing my mind. She asked. You've suffered so deeply. In a restrained, exhausted voice, he replied.
I've told you every day. This is unbearable torture for me. Would I have come back otherwise? Would I live in this house, with you and with them, if I didn't love them? You've been cruel to me. The children are the only joy in my life, and you know that perfectly well. I was a father of the old kind, just as I was a husband of the old kind, a man of instinct, of nature, of the old world. Yes, I admit it. You stirred in me a burning jealousy, because you are a woman of another breed, another spirit, other needs. Ah, I'll never forget what you said to me. But since then, I've ceased to care about you. I didn't kill you only because that would have robbed me of the one way to discover which of your children is not mine. I waited, but I suffered more than you can imagine. I no longer dare to love them, except perhaps the two eldest. I'm afraid to look at them, to call them, to embrace them. I can't place one on my knee without thinking, is it this one? For 6 years I've been proper with you, even gentle and courteous. Tell me the truth, and I swear I'll do nothing rash. In the darkness of the carriage, he thought she was moved. He sensed she was ready to speak. Please, he said softly. I beg you. She whispered. Perhaps I'm guiltier than you think. But I couldn't go on living that repulsive life, always pregnant. I had no other way. I lied before God. I lied with my hand raised above the children's heads, but I never betrayed you. In the dark, he seized her hand and gripped it as he had on that dreadful day in the forest. Is that true? It is. But he groaned, trembling with anguish. Ah, now I'm condemned to eternal doubt. When did you lie, then or now? How can I believe you? How can I ever believe a woman again? I'll never know the truth. It would have been better if you'd just said, Jacques or Jean. The carriage rolled into the courtyard of the mansion. When it stopped at the entrance, the Count stepped out first and, as always, offered his arm to the Countess as they ascended the stairs. On the second floor, he asked, May I speak with you a few minutes more? Of course, she replied. They entered a small sitting room. The footman, surprised, lit the candles. Alone again, the Count resumed. How am I to know the truth? I've begged you 1,000 times to tell me, but you remained silent, impenetrable, unyielding, merciless. And now you say it was all a lie. For 6 years you kept me in this deception. No, you're lying now. I just don't know why. Perhaps out of pity. She answered sincerely. But otherwise, I would have had 4 more children in those 6 years. He cried out. And that, from a mother. Ah, she replied, I don't feel like the mother of unborn children. It's enough for me to be the mother of those I have, and to love them with all my heart. I, like all of us, am a woman of the civilized world, sir. We are not merely females populating the earth, and we refuse to be. She rose, but he seized her hands. One word, Gabrielle. Tell me the truth. I've already told you. I never betrayed you. He looked into her face, beautiful, with eyes the color of a cold sky. In her hair, black as night, a diamond diadem sparkled like the Milky Way. And suddenly he understood that before him stood not merely a woman meant for reproduction, but a strange, mysterious creation of the ages, one who had absorbed all refined desires, who had strayed from her original divine purpose, and now wandered in search of elusive beauty. Yes, there are such women, born for dreams, adorned with all the poetry, brilliance of ideals, and charm that civilization has bestowed upon woman, a living statue, drawing not only carnal desire, but spiritual longing.
The husband stood before her, stunned by this late and enigmatic confession, vaguely sensing the roots of his long-standing jealousy, yet still unable to fully grasp them. At last, he said, I believe you. I feel that now you're telling the truth, whereas before, I must admit, it always seemed to me that your words concealed a lie. She extended her hand to him. Then we're friends. He took her palm and, touching it to his lips, replied, Friends. Thank you, Gabrielle. And as he tore his gaze from her with difficulty, he stepped out astonished that she was still so beautiful, and feeling within himself a stirring of emotion, perhaps far more dangerous than that old, simple love.